Welcome to the Maranatha Global Bible Study. I'm Daniel Thomas Lancaster with First Fruits of Zion, sitting with you here at the EMMAUS table once again as a guest teacher to talk about the end of days. First Fruits of Zion is a Messianic Jewish teaching organization. Today, we are doing our second session of a series of talks I've titled Satan in Chains. It's a sort of sample of the type of material you can anticipate learning in the year-long Torah Club Bible study titled End of Days from First Fruits of Zion that begins this October. So if you like learning this kind of material, you're going to want to check out a Torah Club. So check it out, endofdays.org. That's all one word, endofdays.org. All right. Last week, we began to explore the topic of the binding of Satan as depicted in the book of Revelation. So according to Revelation chapter 20, Satan will be chained up for 1,000 years in the abyss. It says at the outset of the Messianic era, the angel Michael, the archangel Michael, is going to descend from heaven with a key to the abyss and a great chain in his hand, and he's going to lay hold of the dragon, that serpent, the old serpent who is the devil and Satan, and he throws him into the abyss, and he shuts it, and he seals it over him. He seals it shut and that's where the adversary then remains imprisoned for the duration of the Messianic era, for the 1,000 years of the kingdom. So last week, in connection with the topic of the binding of Satan, we also learned Jesus' parable of the strong man. How can someone enter a strong man's house and plunder his goods unless he first binds the strong man? Then, indeed, he may plunder his house. Matthew 12:29. Or in the other version, in Luke, when a strong man fully armed guards his own palace, his goods are safe. But when one stronger than he attacks him and overcomes him, he takes away his armor, in which he trusted, and divides his spoil. That's Luke 11:14-22. So we learned in this teaching that the strong man alludes to Pharaoh in the Exodus story, but symbolizes Satan. So the strong man's palace, if we're talking about Pharaoh in Egypt, it would be the land of Egypt. But as the symbolism is working out, it's this current world that's under the authority of the adversary. The strong man's goods, then, are the people of this world, including the sons and daughters of Abraham, suffering under bondage to him. The Messiah is the one stronger than him, just like Moses in the Exodus story, who comes and attacks him, overcomes him, and binds him, and then loots him and takes the spoil. So the Messiah comes, binds the enemy, takes his possessions, liberates those sons and daughters of Abraham that are bent under the bondage of the devil. And so Jesus told this parable of the strong man to explain how it is that he's able to exploit, he's able to perform the miracles and cast out evil spirits and so forth. And the parable points then towards the coming Messianic era when Satan will be bound for 1,000 years. And Jesus said, "If it is by the finger of God that I cast out demons, then the kingdom of God has come upon you." On another occasion, he sent out his disciples with the authority of his name. It says in Matthew chapter 10, Jesus summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits, to cast them out, and to heal every kind of disease and every kind of sickness. So when Jesus sent them out, he sent them out ahead of him, 2 by 2, into every town and place where he himself was about to go, it tells us. And as he sent them out, he told them to proclaim this message: the kingdom of heaven is at hand. That's the gospel message. And so they're proclaiming this message: the kingdom is at hand. And then they're offering proof of that claim, demonstrating the validity of the claim through the miracles of healing healing sickness and disease and leprosy and even death, and also casting out demons. These were not just miracles for the sake of miracles. These were not just signs and wonders for the sake of doing supernatural stuff. They're supposed to function as direct evidence for his claim that the kingdom of heaven is about to break in, that the kingdom of heaven is right here. It's really close. How close is it? It's so close. So these are tokens of the nearness of the Messianic era, which undergirds his gospel message. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. So we read in another version of this in Luke chapter 10, it says, the 72, so this time, the second time he sent out disciples, he sent out 72. It says, the 72 returned with joy, saying, Master, even the demons are subject to us in your name. And he said to them, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Behold, I have given you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions, and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall hurt you. Nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven. All right, what does this mean? What does it mean that he saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven? What was Satan doing in heaven in the first place? And why did he fall? And I should point out that lightning does not fall. Rain falls. Lightning strikes. So the fall of Satan that our master witnessed in whatever capacity he witnessed it, and whatever that might mean, was a catastrophic and sudden descent, like a stroke of lightning, zwat. So what was Satan doing in heaven in the first place before he got zwatted down to earth? Well, in Judaism, Satan is not considered to be the lord of the underworld. He's not the lord of hell as like in a Dante-esque imagery or anything like that. In Judaism, Satan is one of the angels of the heavenly court, where he currently serves as the adversary, the prosecuting attorney who brings accusations against Israel and ultimately accusations against all mankind, all humanity. The name Satan is actually the Hebrew word. It actually means prosecutor or adversary, like it's a courtroom term for a prosecutor, for the prosecuting attorney. So the idea of Satan ruling over the abyss as Lord of Hell, this is actually an idea borrowed from Greek mythology, where the god of the underworld, Hades, rules over the realm of the dead. Satan's domain is not the realm of the dead. He's not the Lord of Gehenna or Sheol. Instead, the apostles refer to him as the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that is now working in the sons of disobedience, it says in Ephesians 2:2. And he rules among the powers against the world forces of this darkness, the spiritual forces of wickedness in heavenly places, it says in Ephesians 6:12. So when the master says he saw Satan fall from heaven, from the sky, it implies that he saw Satan cast down from his place of authority, from the realm of his power. The casting down of Satan is a common element in Jewish legend, something that's never directly narrated in the Tanakh, in the Torah or the prophets or the writings, but is definitely alluded to by the prophets Isaiah and Ezekiel. So what we're going to do, we're going to read through Isaiah 14. But before we read the prophecy, I want to explain how the prophets use this story of the casting down of Satan, both Ezekiel and Isaiah. They never tell us the story, not directly. Instead, it seems to be a Hebrew story that they all knew. Like the prophets knew, and they could expect that their readers also knew. It's part of the broader mythology of the ancient Near East, perhaps, or maybe it was part of the epic poetry tradition of the Hebrew bards, but it's not a story directly told in the Torah or anywhere in the scriptures, for that matter. I just think that in the days of the prophets, it was just something, it was like an epic poem, maybe, that everyone seems to have known or at least heard of in one form or another, probably in many different forms, many different versions. But in any case, the prophets Isaiah and Ezekiel both reuse the narrative of the fall of Satan, the poetry of the fall of Satan, for something else. Isaiah reuses the story of the casting down of Satan as a taunt against the king of Babylon. And in this taunting, he compares the king of Babylon to the Satan. Like Satan, the king of Babylon exalted himself to be like God, and like Satan, he will be thrown down from his high place. That's the taunt of Isaiah 14, a taunt against the king of Babylon. So Ezekiel likes Isaiah's material, and he repurposes it. But he copied this idea and used the same idea as a taunt against the king of Tyre. And that's Ezekiel 28. So these are the two biblical sources for the legend of the casting down of Satan. And the situation kind of reminds me of something we see in archaeology, and that is when we see stones in secondary use. For example, if you ever go to Beersheba, at Tel Beersheba, the archaeologists that excavated Tel Beersheba discovered an ancient altar of cut stones. But the altar, when they found it, was disassembled, and its stones were scattered around the city in secondary use in the structures of later houses and walls. So the archaeologist comes in and he recognizes these particular stones as scattered puzzle pieces and reassembles them. And behold, you put them all together and you have a four-horned cut stone altar. So we find the legend of the fall of Satan likewise embedded in the Bible like stones from an older structure, now reused, embedded in secondary use in newer material. The newer material in this case is Isaiah's oracle against the king of Babylon and Ezekiel's taunt against the king of Tyre. So when archaeologists find these stones embedded in secondary use, if they find enough of the stones, they're able to surmise what the original structure looked like. And sometimes, like in Beersheba, they're even able to rebuild the original structure. So, taking the imagery and content from Isaiah's prophecy against the king of Babylon, that's Isaiah 14, and Ezekiel's taunt against the king of Tyre, that's Ezekiel 28, if we do that, we can reconstruct the legend of the fall of Satan and his subsequent ejection from heaven. Okay? Because Satan, it turns out, was not always the prince of evil. He was once called the anointed cherub, the anointed angel. He was called the star of the morning, the son of the dawn. He was sealed with perfection, full of wisdom, perfect in beauty among the angels. He was blameless and walked in the holy mountain of God, the Edenic mountain of God, as priest over the heavenly temple, where he walked among the stones of fire. He was in Eden, in the garden of God, and every precious stone was his covering. The ruby, the topaz, the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, the jasper, the lapis lazuli, the turquoise, the emerald, the gold. The workmanship of the settings and sockets of his priestly vestments was in him. And on the day that he was created, these things were prepared for him. So he was called the covering angel, the covering cherub, like the cherubim that overshadow the ark of the covenant. He was privileged to spread his wings in canopy over the throne of glory. He was blameless in his ways from the day he was created until unrighteousness was found in him. For he was not content with his exalted status. One might say, he deemed equality with God a thing to be grasped. He said in his heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the mount of assembly in the recesses of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. Therefore, the Lord casts him to the ground and ultimately casts him into the abyss, into Sheol. All right, that's how we piece this legend back together. Here's the thing to understand. Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28 are predictions of a future event that will befall the adversary, not a description of something that has happened in the past. I think we need to make this distinction. We should probably be distinguishing between three separate events. Number one, the fall of Satan. That is his rebellion against the Most High sometime in the primordial past. Number two, the casting down of Satan that seems to occur in the eschatological last battles. And number three, ultimately the binding of Satan at the outset of the final redemption, which is the conclusion of his descent from heaven. So three different things. So just for fun, we'll read Isaiah 14, understanding that although it's being directed against the king of Babylon, we are also reading a prediction of the fall of the adversary and the prediction of the final redemption and the Messianic era. So I'm going to read it for you right here off the teleprompter. Isaiah 14. When the Lord will have compassion on Jacob and again choose Israel and settle them in their own land, then strangers will join them and attach themselves to the house of Jacob. The peoples will take them along and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel will possess them as an inheritance in the land of the Lord, as male servants and female servants, and they will take their captors captive and will rule over their oppressors. And it will be in the day when the Lord gives you rest from your pain and turmoil and harsh service in which you have been enslaved, that you will take up this taunt against the king of Babylon and say, how the oppressor has ceased, and how fury has ceased. The Lord has broken the staff of the wicked, the scepter of rulers, which used to strike the people in fury with unceasing strokes, which subdued the nations in anger with unrestrained persecution. The whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into shouts of joy. Even the cypress trees rejoice over you, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since you were laid low, no tree cutter comes up against us. Sheol from beneath is excited over you to meet you when you come. It arouses for you the spirits of the dead, all the leaders of the earth. It raises all the kings of the nations from their thrones. They will all respond and say to you, even you have been made weak as we. You have become like us. Your pomp and the music of your harps have been brought down to Sheol. Maggots are spread out as your bed beneath you, and worms are your covering. How have you fallen from heaven, O star of the morning, son of the dawn? You have been cut down to the earth, you who have weakened the nations. But you said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the mount of assembly in the recesses of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. Nevertheless, you will be thrust down to Sheol, to the recesses of the pit. Those who see you will gaze at you. They will wonder over you, saying, is this the man who made the earth tremble, who shook kingdoms, who made the world like a wilderness and overthrew its cities, who did not allow his prisoners to go home? Isaiah 14, verses 1 through 17. Do you see parable of the strong man, hidden in the words, who did not allow his prisoners to go home? Do you see the prophecy of Michael casting Satan into the abyss, and how he will be greeted by those already imprisoned in those immortal chains in Sheol? Notice that he is described as one who weakened the nations, which is very similar to what it says in Revelation 20, where it says the angel threw him into the abyss and shut it and sealed it over him so that he would not deceive the nations any longer. No longer able to weaken the nations. This is the future that we're seeing. The casting down of Satan, I don't think, is something that has happened in the past. Instead, we are looking to the future redemption when Satan will be cast down from his place of authority and ultimately into the abyss for 1,000 years until the final judgment. In other words, we might have confused the rebellion of Satan with the casting down of Satan and conflated them into one event. The fall of Satan refers to his rebellion in the days of Adam, when unrighteousness was found in him, when he took possession of the serpent in the garden, when he gathered followers in the form of fallen angels, including the hosts of Azazel. That's the fall of Satan. But it's a different story than the casting down of Satan. The casting down of Satan occurs in the future, at the time of the coming of the kingdom. And the casting down of Satan, then, is closely tied to the chaining of Satan and the final redemption. It was the casting down of Satan which our Master foresaw. In my opinion, this explains what he means when he tells his disciples, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." He was referring to how close the kingdom had come. As the disciples were out casting out spirits, healing disease and sickness, healing leprosy, raising the dead, they brought clear evidence that Satan's kingdom was collapsing. With prophetic vision, our Master sees Satan fall like lightning, a vision of the end, a vision of the redemption. It's well known that one sees lightning before hearing the thunder. Jesus is saying to his disciples that the kingdom is so close, it's like the distance between a flash of lightning and the sound of the thunder. Today, we are nearly 2,000 years later living in a world that's still under the power of Satan. You might say we are still waiting for the clap of thunder. We're still waiting for the fulfillment of the vision. The evidence is that Jesus of Nazareth was able to send out his disciples in his name and authority, and they were able to cast out spirits, heal every disease and sickness, and tread upon serpents and scorpions, the evidence that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The redemption has been set in motion, but we aren't there yet. Next week, we'll take a look at Revelation 12. The woman with the crown of 12 stars, the dragon, the descent of Satan. Until then, come quickly, Lord. Maranatha.